Take one. Okay, so Capstone, hello, welcome. This is Finn's Capstone. Welcome. I already said that. Okay, so basically the encapsulants of my genius has all focused into this one idea of making my locker open by itself. So I hope you understand like the basics of this with the PowerPoint before or whatever, but this is where it gets real. This is where it gets serious. So yeah, I'm going to show you the mechanisms behind how this thing will work, and hopefully by the end you'll understand it a little bit better. Okay, so the first component, the locking component, that would go in the front of the locker, so it's exposed and able to be unlocked. I guess that's how locks work, but this is the first part. So it all kind of starts with a loop, and I'll break down this loop. Three. So it all starts out in the brain of the operation with the Arduino. So the Arduino is where I put all my code in and where it sends all the digital signals out. And I said I'm going to explain the loop before, but it's not really, it's a bunch of loops every second. It's going to be doing this whole process a bunch every second. So the Arduino sends out a signal to the RFID scanner telling it to start scanning for something. So RFID scanner, which is this little thing, RFID is like what the technology behind credit card, like taps, hotel cards. There's a lot of things that use RFID, but this is one use of them, I guess. So it sends out a signal in its area being like, hey, is there any RFID tags out here? And if the RFID tag's like, what up? Then the RFID tag is sent to the RFID scanner itself, and the RFID scanner sends all that information back to the Arduino, being like, this is the tag that I found in the area. So our Arduino takes that information, and using the super fun code I wrote, that definitely didn't take like most of this Capstone project to figure out how to do. After I do that, it's gonna unravel the ID tag and be like, okay, is this authorized or is this not authorized? Do I know this or do I not know this ID tag? And so if it does, it goes on to the next step. And if it doesn't, put a big red X there. That's what this is. Put a big red X. And if it doesn't recognize it, then it doesn't let it go to the next step. It's like, we don't know this one. Just keep going. And it starts from the loop beginning. But let's say it goes on to the next step. So the next step is the Arduino sends code to the solenoid. Solenoid is this little thing that has a magnet in the front of it that pushes it out or brings it back in again. Right now it's in the on mode where it's pushing out through the little hole where you put your lock. It's pushing through that so you can't physically open the door, right? So it tells that solenoid, it's like, hey, take a break. I got this. And so the solenoid unlatches, and then you can open the door. You wouldn't, but you could if you wanted to. Now that that's done, the solenoid sends a message back being like, all right, siesta time, it's 4 p.m., time to go to sleep. Arduino's like, okay, I see you. Sends a signal to the first radio transmitter. So this radio transmitter is connected to a second one via radio, and it sends it to the second part of the build. And so this second part of the build, take 8. Okay, and this second part of the build is the part that will open it. And so now that a second radio transmitter, the one that's connected to the first, obviously, receives a signal that, okay, the lock part has finished its duty, the door can be opened now. That message is sent from the second radio transmitter to the Arduino of the second build. And so now this Arduino is like, okay, cool, time to do our job, time to pick up our own slack, right? And sends out a message to the relay system. Now the relay system is the one I tried to explain in the PowerPoint, but I realized it's too hard to explain in the PowerPoint, so I'm going to explain it again. Editor, make that funny. Okay, so the relay is a thing, has 3 metal prongs, and so these 3 prongs, the 2 outside ones are static, meaning they don't move, they're always there, right? But the one in the middle is the one that makes all the decisions, you know? And so that middle one can decide which circuit to close by leaning on the left one or leaning on the right one. And that's the signal that you can control with the Arduino. You can control which one the middle one will go to, right? And so one thing that is kind of important to know about motors, I explained it in the thing, blah, 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 I'm gonna explain it again, okay? Okay, cool. So the motor that I have has 2 terminals. It has a positive and a negative, right? So say you supply positive electricity to the positive one, negative electricity to the negative one, it runs as it's supposed to. It runs forward, I'm gonna call it. And so, okay, and so now that you know, if you run positive to the positive terminal in the motor, negative to the negative terminal in the motor, it runs as it's supposed to, but they put a little sneaky trick in there where if you reverse the polarity, making the positive go in the positive, negative go in the negative, right? That means the motor will spin the opposite way, which is very useful because I need it to not only open the locker, but close the locker, because what fun would that be if it just opened? Because then you have to close it all by yourself. Okay, back to relays. So the relays have these 3 prongs, right? And so now let's say you give positive electricity to the outside one and negative electricity to the other outside one, right? The one in the middle isn't charged, right? But as soon as you lean it on either side of the metal ones, it's connected to that. So if you connect it to the one on the negative electricity, all of a sudden that relay is outputting negative electricity, and vice versa with the positive one. So now that I have that relay, I can decide with the signal that the Arduino is giving it which electricity it's going to give off, right? So now you have these 2 relays that can output whatever electricity they want, right? Depending on what that middle one determines them to be, okay? So now let's say we hook up the middle prong of each relay to the terminal in the motor, right? So now I can determine the polarity of the terminal in the motor just by sending a signal, hey, lean on the negative side, hey, lean on the positive side of both relays. So now I can decide when the Arduino sends a signal to this relay system, right? It'll be like, okay, right side, connect to positive, left side, connect to negative, and then those will connect to the terminals of the motor, making it spin the right way. So once the Arduino wakes up, it sends a new signal, and this signal says, hey, whatever polarity you were attached to while you were opening, just flip that. So 2 of the middle prongs in the relays both just go from whatever side they were leaning on to the opposite. Now they're switching to the opposite polarity, meaning that the motor will turn the other way, and that's thus retracting. Take 20 with 3. There's a lot of like small mechanisms and little interactions between each little component, and there's a lot of code that's so much fun to look at. Basically what made this thing take so long, but I don't care about it. You shouldn't care about it. Take my word for it. Here's some code, there's some code. Hamburger, hot dog, sausage roll. Thank you for watching. This has been Capstone. I promise there's not a the end slide at the end of this. But here's one in video, the end.